Assalamu alaikum dear students, welcome to lesson number 11 of your book 2, and this is the first lesson or first chapter of the second part of this book. I think you can remember or you can recall that this book is it consists of two parts. The first one was modern prose and the second part is heroes, and this is the first chapter we are going to read today in the second part of that is heroes, and this chapter is entitled First Year at Harrow, and it is written by Sir Winston S. Churchill. We are going to begin with the text. The first line says, "I had scarcely passed my 12th birthday when I entered the inhospitable regions of examinations." He tells us that he had just passed his 12th birthday, means he was just 12 years of age when he had to encounter examinations, and he calls examinations as inhospitable. Inhospitable means unkind, that which are not liked, which are rough, which are we can say not good. And regions means that the sphere of examinations, that he was 12 years of age when he had to sit in examinations, through which for the next 7 years I was destined to journey. And he knew at that time that for the coming 7 years he had to journey. He had to journey through examinations. He had to sit in examinations. He had to take examinations. These examinations were a great trial to me. He tells us that the examinations were a kind of trial to him. They were not good for him. They were something we can say trial. He was under the trial whenever he had to take examinations, and that trial was great even. The subjects which were dearest to the examiners were almost invariably those I fancied least. And the funny thing is that he says that the subjects which were dearest to the examiners means which the examiners considered most important or most good or best for them were almost invariably those I fancied least. Fancied means that he didn't like those subjects which were liked or which were reckoned as important by the examiners. And invariably means that without any variation, without any reserve, all of the subjects which he disliked, they were liked, and they were thought important by the examiners. I would have liked to have been examined in history, poetry and writing essays. What subjects did he like? History, poetry and writing essays, and he wanted that he should be examined in these subjects. But the examiners, on the other hand, but on the contrary, what examiners liked were partial to Latin and mathematics. But examiners were more concerned with Latin and mathematics, and they wanted to test the people, their students, in these two. They like to test their students in these two subjects, that is Latin and mathematics, and they were partial to these. And he thinks that they were partial to these subjects means that they preferred these subjects for their students, and their will prevailed. And what happened, that their will, the will of the examiners instead of the will of the writer, the will of the examiners prevailed. It was dominant, means they liked these subjects. The examiners wanted to test their students in Latin and mathematics, so the students were usually tested in these two subjects. Moreover, the questions which they asked on both these subjects were almost invariably those to which I was unable to suggest a satisfactory answer. And the next thing is that even if he was sitting in the examination, even if he took examinations of these two subjects, what the examiners did was that they put those questions which he couldn't give a satisfactory answer to. Means they asked those questions which the writer felt difficult for him to answer. I should have liked to be asked to say what I knew. And he, as all students, it is the psyche of all students that they want that they should their question paper should consist of the questions which they knew, which they can answer. And the same, he wanted to ask to be asked those questions which he knew. But they always try to ask what I did not know. But what happened? The examiners asked those questions which he did not know. So I think through these lines, I think that obviously Leiter didn't had a command in those two subjects. So whatever he was asked, he thought that I am being asked whatever I don't know. Perhaps he didn't know anything actually. When I would have willingly displayed my knowledge, they sought to expose my ignorance. He says that I compelled myself, I put on my courage to sit in the examination of Latin and mathematics, to appear in the test of Latin and mathematics willingly. And I wanted to display my knowledge over there in these examinations. What happened then, that his will, though he was willing to appear in those examinations and to perform well in those examinations, but what they did is that they sought to expose their ignorance. Means that they put those questions which he could not answer, which he wasn't having any knowledge about. So finally it exposed his ignorance, his lack of knowledge. This sort of treatment had only one result: I did not do well in examinations. And the last line is that this sort of the whole treatment which he has told us in the whole paragraph, that this sort of treatment by the examiners, it resulted, it led to the fact that he couldn't do well in examinations. He couldn't ever perform well in examinations. Fine. The next paragraph says, this was especially true of my entrance examination to Harrow. Now he comes to his entrance examination which he took in Harrow, for entry in Harrow, for enrollment in Harrow. Harrow is a college. The headmaster, Mr. Weldon, however, took a broad-minded view of my Latin prose. Obviously, as he already told us, that the examiners wanted to test the students in Latin and mathematics. So the headmaster of Harrow, whose name is Mr. Weldon, he tested him for Latin prose. And he says that though examinations are very bad, but the headmaster of that Harrow, that college, took a broad-minded view. He took a broad-minded view. He took it positive. Whatever he attempted in the Latin prose, the headmaster took it positively. He showed discernment in judging my general ability. He showed concern, he showed understanding of his general ability. Instead of judging his knowledge in the paper, instead of judging the knowledge of the writer in the paper, the headmaster tried to judge his general ability. What happened? He is telling in the coming lines. This was the more remarkable, this was more good, this was more important. Because I was found unable to answer a single question in the Latin paper, because not only that he had written something, rather he was unable to write anything in the Latin paper, because he couldn't answer even a single question in that paper. What he did in that paper is, I wrote my name at the top of the page. When he got the paper in front, question paper in front of him, on the answer sheet, he just wrote his name at the top of the page. I wrote down the number of the question 1, then he wrote down the number of question 1, that as if he is supposed to answer that question. After much reflection, after much thought, after much thinking, after much pondering over, I put a bracket round each, thus. Then he, like this, he put parentheses or brackets around this one. But thereafter I could not think of anything connected with it that was either relevant or true. But after that, he could not think anything that he could write as an answer to that question, or anything which is written, which is connected or relevant to that question number 1, which he was having in front of him in the question paper. Incidentally, there arrived from nowhere, in particular, a blot and several smudges. What happened? That incidentally, he, as if out of unconscious, out of not knowing, he just put some blots and some smudges, several smudges on the question paper, and they came as if from nowhere, because he did not deliberately put that smudges and blot, rather unconsciously he put those smudges and blot, because he didn't have anything in his brain, in his mind, to answer that question. I gazed for 2 whole hours at this sad spectacle. So in that, he just looked keenly on his question, his answer sheet, and for 2 whole hours, and he looked sad. He looked everything in a sad, gloomy mood. And then merciful ushers collected my piece of foolscap with all the others and carried it up to the headmaster's table. Then the merciful ushers, he called them merciful, means the linemen, the people who were attending that that examination, they collected the piece of paper, and he calls it foolscap, because it didn't have anything, it didn't have not a single word of knowledge or answers in that. So he calls it foolscap with all the others, and they took the papers of all other students also, and they carried it to the headmaster's table. It was from these slender indications of scholarship, from minor tiny indications, the signs of scholarship, that Mr. Weldon drew the conclusion. Mr. Weldon jumped to the conclusion, to the inference, to the result that I was worthy to pass into Harrow. And because of that, all that attempt in that paper, Mr. Weldon, as he was broad-minded, he took a broad-mind view, as he has already told us, and he said that this student is worthy to pass into Harrow, to be entered or enrolled in Harrow. It is very much to his credit, and he says it is all, the writer says it is all of his own credit, that it is his beneficence, it is his kindness that he did it. It showed that he was a man capable of looking beneath the surface of things, and he says that as he was a man, it was not me that had gone up to the merit, rather it was him, it was his credit, as he was a man of capable of looking beneath the surface of things, that he didn't look at the things on the surface level, rather he understood things deeply. A man not dependent upon paper manifestations, and he was a man, Mr. Weldon was a man who wasn't dependent upon paper manifestations, the things shown in the paper only, rather he was dependent upon the will and the genius of any student. I have always had the greatest regard for him, and the writer says, as he had given me the admission in Harrow by judging my general ability, and by judging me beneath the lines, so I have a the greatest regard for him, greatest respect for that headmaster of Harrow. In consequence of his decision, finally, as a result of his decision, I was in due course placed in the 3rd or lowest division of the 4th or bottom. So he was placed in the very lowest division of the 4th or bottom. From the bottom, he was the lowest, 3rd or lowest. Fine. The names of the new boys were printed in the school list in alphabetical order, and as my correct name, Spencer Churchill, began with an S, I gained no more advantage from the alphabet than from the wider sphere of letters. So though he hadn't performed well in the paper, in the entrance examination, so he hadn't got good grades, so he was destined to lie very down beneath down in the line, in the queue of the students, but the names were written with alphabet, and he says that I could have advantage of being of alphabet, and I could come on the top of the mid of the first top of the list if my name was started with any other letter, but my name started with S, which is a very late letter in the 26 alphabets of English. I was in fact only 2 from the bottom of the whole school. So in the whole school, he was the 3rd last of in the list, and these two and the last 2 students I regret to say, and he feels sorry to say, disappeared almost immediately through illness or some other cause. And last two students they disappeared. They didn't attended school, and they didn't attend school because of their illness or some other cause. They didn't ever come. They didn't ever appeared in school. So he was the last in the list. I continued in this unpretentious situation for nearly a year. For a whole year, he continued in this unpretentious situation, unassuming situation. He just led that school for a year. However, by being so long in the lowest form, I gained an immense advantage over the cleverer boys. Now he had immense advantage, very good advantage over cleverer boys, because he was in the last and the lowest in the list. They all went on to learn Latin and Greek, because the cleverer boys were sent to learn Latin and Greek because they were brilliant students and splendid things like that. And these are, he calls them Latin and Greek as splendid things because they are liked by everyone. But I was taught English, but he was left to be taught English. We were considered such dunces that we could learn only English. They were the people, the lowest in the list. They were considered as if the students who could learn only English, because English was considered as a simple and easy subject. Mr. Somervell, a most delightful man to whom my debt is great, was charged with the duty of teaching and the subject boys, the stupidest boys. He tells us that Mr. Somervell was the teacher. His name was Mr. Somervell. He was asked to, he was a delightful man, very happy and good man, a man of good temper. He was asked to teach us English, and he says that my debt to him is great. Much regard is due to Mr. Somervell by him, because he was the man who had taught him English, and he was charged with the duty of teaching the stupidest boys, and he was asked to teach those boys who were least brilliant, who were weak in their studies. Most disregarded thing, and he calls English as disregarded thing. People thought that English is a disregarded thing, and the students whom this English is being taught, they are stupidest of the all students, namely to write mere English. He says that it was regarded, mere English writing, mere English was regarded as disregarded thing, and learning English and Greek, they were considered splendid things at that time. He knew how to do it, and Mr. Somervell knew how to write English, so he was given this charge of making students know how to write English. He taught it as no one else has ever taught it, and he says he appreciates that teacher, that their teachers, Mr. Somervell taught English as no one else in the world could teach. Not only did we learn English parsing thoroughly, not only he learned English parsing, means separating of the elements of English structure, but we also practiced continually English analysis, and they had learned English analysis also. How can we analyze an English sentence? Mr. Somervell had a system of his own. Mr. Somervell has his own way of teaching. He took a fairly long sentence and broke it up into its components by means of black, red, blue and green inks. And what he used to do, he used to write a long sentence, and he used to break it into chunks, into components, by using different colored inks. And for example, for subject a different colored inks, for verb a different color ink, for object a different color, relative clauses a different color, conditional clauses a different color, and conjunctive and disjunctive clauses a different color. Each had its color and its bracket. It was a kind of drill, so it was an exercise which he used to do. Mr. Somervell used to practice in his class. We did it almost daily, and they used to practice it daily. As I remained in the third 3 times as long as anyone else, I had 3 times as much of it. So he says that he had more practice than any other student in his class. I learned it thoroughly, so he learned the English thoroughly. Thus I got into my bones the essential structure of the ordinary British sentence. Now the time came when he had the whole structure of ordinary British English on his fingertips, as if it had just got into his bones. He was so much, he got such a great command on the English structure, which is a noble thing. And now he says that I call it noble thing, though initially he said that this was regarded as disregarded thing, very meager and minor and weak thing and inconsiderable thing, English sentence, but now he calls it a noble thing. He himself is of the view that writing English is a noble thing. And when in after years my school fellows who had won prizes and distinction for writing such beautiful Latin poetry and pithy Greek epigrams had to come down again to common English, and he now comes to the view that after so many years of school, that his school fellows who had at the school time when they had won prizes and distinction for their beautiful Latin and Greek poetry and pithy epigrams. Greek epigrams means proverbs, and Latin poetry they used to write down, and they had won prizes for learning such a beautiful Latin and German, Latin and Greek. Now they had come down again to common English. Come down means from a higher standard of Latin and Greek they had to come to the lower standard of English, which was thought as a lower rank subject, and they had to learn English to earn their living or make their way, and finally they had to come down to English in order to living or make their way, because Greek and learning only in Greek and Latin couldn't help them to earn their living, to do a good job. For job they were dependent upon English. I did not feel myself at any disadvantage. Now it was the time that he felt that I am in an advantage to have learned English already. I am not a disadvantage to not being able to learn Latin and Greek. Naturally, I am biased in favor of boys learning English. Finally, he came to the conclusion that he favors those boys who learn English. I would make them all learn English, and he says that I will try to make boys learn English, and then I would let the clever ones learn Latin as an honor, and then he says that I will ask the boys to all of the boys to learn English, and I will ask the clever ones, the brighter ones, to learn Latin also as an honor and Greek as a treat. But the only thing I would whip them for is not knowing English. But but those students he would deal strictly who don't know English, means that he will be more concerned to teach English to students instead of Greek and Latin. I would whip them hard for that. Right, this was all about my first year at Harrow, and I hope you have understood this lesson, and I hope you can recall the examples given by the writer. You can apply it to your own life, your own experience of learning English, how you feel about this subject, and how do you feel about any other subjects, how do you feel about the examinations, how either you like them or not, and how do you feel about the questions given in the examinations. All this you can associate with your own experiences, and I hope you have enjoyed it. See you in the next lecture. Allah Hafiz.